संसार दावानलील लोका
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Srila Prabhupada ki jai. New Vrindaban ki jai. So we're going to be doing 5 seminars over the next 3 days. These are the topics. I'm not sure if here they're exactly in the order we're going to be presenting them. 1 per class. There are schedules posted, which seminar we're going to be doing at which time. And these are all workshops, fun shops. So they're participatory, If you came here just to be entertained and not to participate, you're in the wrong place. So we will be doing activities, and you will be making plans and things of that nature. All right? Okay. So we're going to be modeling these particular seminars after 6 of the parts of Ashtanga Yoga. Yam, Niyam, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, and Samadhi. And in each of the seminars, we're going to be looking at some of these, or in a few cases, all of these. So some of you who may not be so familiar with this, so Yam and Niyam is about what? Do's and don'ts. Yes. And what about Pratyahara? Withdrawing from the sense objects. And we're going to be looking here at Pratyahara particularly as withdrawing from material conceptions of the world and of our own identity. And dharana, what does that mean? What does dara mean, literally? Giri dhari. To hold. So dharana means to hold. And in Ashtanga Yoga, it means you're holding the mind. We're going to be looking in Bhakti Yoga as far as holding our real identity. Holding who we really are. And dhyan is? To meditate. Yes. So once you've let go of your once you do the do's and the don'ts, you've let go of your false identity, you're holding your real identity, then you naturally meditate on Krishna. And this dhyan is like a flowing stream. So here you see the stream. So the yam and niyam, the do's and the don'ts. Pratyahara is withdrawing from the false identity, false conceptions. Dharana is holding the real identity and the real conceptions, and we're showing holding very gently like a little bird. And dhyana is the effortless flow, and then samadhi. So what is samadhi? Well, trance actually happens almost, you could say, in dhyana. Samadhi, what does sama mean? Equal. And di? Like dhimahi? What is di? Huh? To stay put. To stay put in a conception of oneness, of sama. Of course, this is not the Mayavadi oneness, but this is Vijavanaya Sampade Brahmani Gavihasne Shuni Chaivasvapakita Pandita Samadarshina. To see that everyone is a spiritual being, to see Krishna everywhere, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, to come to ultimate realization. All right, so today, the one we're going to be doing is, how can all the aspects of my life energize me spiritually? My personal conviction is that this particular topic, along with some of the other ones we'll be covering this weekend, are a very major and important factor in taking Krishna consciousness out of the realm of a few serious adherents to the world. So there's a lot of discussion, especially I think in the past few years, about what will it take to make Krishna consciousness a part of the world in general. My personal conviction is you have to show people how to live a Krishna conscious life in the world. Now, when I first joined the Hare Krishna movement, my mother was very skeptical for about a decade. And she used to say things like, okay, you're going out and selling your books and getting people to move into your ashrams, and they go out and sell your books, and those people move into your ashrams. And what will happen when everybody lives in your ashrams? Who will they sell books to? What's your plan for a society? So I should have put that slide in here. I didn't do it. But anyway, there's a temple in Bloomington where their ISKCON sign is missing the S. It says ISKCON. So I should have put that in here. So I think we've been very good. I personally feel we've been very good at international Krishna consciousness. I think we've done a good job of that. But we haven't been so good at the society part, at really building a society and at really infiltrating society. And I think a lot of the reason is that our conceptions of Krishna consciousness are not quite right. What does it mean to practice Krishna consciousness? And you'll see that this is sort of the overriding theme of these 3 days. What can I do to make my whole life Krishna conscious? I really appreciate what Vaisheshika Prabhu said today, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, that means always 24/7. And in fact, when I joined the Hare Krishna movement, one of the main reasons that I joined was for 24/7. My whole life, quite literally, since I was 4, I was looking, how can I remember God all day long? You know, most religions say, well, you have prayer time in the morning, or you have a prayer time on the weekends. But what do you do the rest of the time? How do you remember God when you're brushing your teeth, when you're in the supermarket? And I really sincerely believe that in order to spread Krishna consciousness, we have to teach people how to do this. But before we can teach other people how to do this, we have to learn how to do this. So this particular one is looking at the aspects of our life, this particular seminar, that are not sadhana, other than our sadhana. We're going to have one seminar on how we can make time in our day for high-quality sadhana, but the rest of them are looking at our non-sadhana time. Because like what Vaisheshika Prabhu said, today is if you tell people 24/7, they're going to say, oh my God, that's way too hard. Yes? No way can I do that. Okay, well, at least once a day, make a sadhana time. And that time you remember Krishna, the rest of the time you forget him. So what we're looking at this weekend is, how do I remember him the rest of the time? And in one of our seminars, we're going to be looking at, how do I make time specifically to spend with sadhana? So our keys for this seminar are looking at the pratyahara and the dharana. Getting rid of our false identity and being able to hold our actual identity. And we're going to be looking at our actual identity in 2 different forms. And again, Vaisheshika Prabhu and I did not coordinate this, I promise you. But what he talked about mission today, and I'm like, oh my God. He gave the perfect complement to what I'm going to be talking about. So I'm just so excited. So first I'd like to ask, are there things you do? Again, in this particular seminar, we're not looking at our sadhana time. We're looking at our non-sadhana time. If there are any of you here who only do sadhana all day long, then you're in this seminar to teach other people. Okay? Because this is about people who have a sadhana time, and the rest of the time they're doing something else. So I'd like you to think about if you have activities during your day that you feel are spiritually draining instead of energizing. That you're like, oh God, this part of my day, or this thing I have to do, or whatever, it doesn't enliven me spiritually. I just can't see what it has to do with Krishna. I wish I didn't have to do it. And what we're going to do is look at ways to go from that, oh, this is draining, to this is energizing. Now we're going to look first at some of the symptoms. We're going to look at this psychologically, some of the psychological symptoms. Then we're going to look at the 2 overall causes, you could say theoretical causes. And then we're going to look at practical solutions. So don't worry, we get practical. Okay? This is my general way that I develop things, is problems. What's the problem? What's the theoretical solution? And what's the specific solution? So one problem is thinking that spiritual life means being a renunciate. Equating Krishna consciousness with being in a renounced ashram and thinking everything else is second rate. Now you may say, well, Urmila, that was over in like 1980. But I don't think so. I see it today. Could you suggest some ways? Would you have a mic that can be passed around? I need a mic runner, though. And you got another mic there. Okay, great. So I'd like you guys to suggest some ways in which you think this mentality is still prevalent in our Hare Krishna movement. That the only real devotees are the renunciates. In other words, the only real devotees are those who are doing sadhana all day. Who never do, as if that's what the real renunciates do anyway, but anyway. What's some evidence of this mentality in our movement? Anybody want to have a suggestion? Yes. What we can do is we can have 2 mic runners, one for one half of the room, one for the other half of the room. Not you, you haven't slept. Somebody who has some energy.
Being so austere that we don't take care of our health.
Oh, that's coming. That's the next slide. You're anticipating my slides. All the way on the bottom. Very, 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 yeah, there you go. Okay, we'll use this.
Thinking that if we work, that all we do is donate money and we don't have to do anything but donate money.
Oh, very nice. I didn't even make a slide for that. Excellent. So thinking that if we work, that the only contribution of our work is the donation of money. Okay? That the work in itself has no devotional value. Only the money that we make from the work, yes. Okay? Some other symptoms of thinking that if you're really Krishna conscious, you'd be in a renounced ashram. Yes. Excellent. That's what I was looking for. The respect that we give to the sannyasis. So wherever I go in the world, people assume that only sannyasis are gurus. It doesn't matter where I am, whether I'm in India, whether I'm in Africa, whether I'm in Australia, whether I'm in America, whether I'm in Europe. There's a general assumption that in order to be a guru, you have to be a sannyasi. And there's a general assumption that the sannyasis are more spiritually advanced than everybody else. It's a general assumption. So we really have a culture in our movement that it's only the renunciates who are really Krishna conscious. And there's some parts of the world where anybody who has an outside job or a business or a home off of ISKCON property has a label of part-time devotee. So there are places in the world where in order to be considered a full-time devotee, you have to be living in a temple ashram and working full-time for the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Okay, another, we could say, symptom is thinking that renunciation is hard-heartedness. Thinking that in order to be detached from the world, you have to harden your heart. And I know I certainly felt this way. That this was a real problem for me as a new member of the Hare Krishna movement. And I know when I lived here in New Vrindavan in 1980, it was a very prevalent feature of the community here. I remember one of the leaders of the community telling me, well, this child's very lucky because she doesn't know who her mother is. You know, this sort of thing that you have to like cut off your feelings and your emotions in order to be renounced. That's what it means. And again, I still find this kind of preaching that thinking that Yamunacharya would spit at sex life, that what that meant was that he had a hard heart. What it really meant is if, you have a wonderful plate of prasadam and somebody brings you 5-day-old bread, you go, I don't really want that. But you're not hard-hearted, you understand? But this thinking that I have to be hard-hearted, or thinking that renunciation means being irresponsible. Yes. Yes, you certainly can. But do get the mic.
Doesn't it automatically happens when you do sadhana?
That's the idea. The idea that a symptom of your good Krishna consciousness is you become renounced, but you don't become hard-hearted or irresponsible. So if we're equating material detachment with hard-heartedness, I just don't care about anything anymore. Or if we conflate material detachment with irresponsibility, this leads to this problem of having activities in our life that don't spiritually enliven us. Now we come to what you were talking about. This is with other people. When I'm so busy doing service that I neglect my family, I neglect my friends, I may neglect their physical needs, their emotional needs, their social needs. And again, I still find this going on in our movement. I still find this going on. I don't have time to cook, I don't have time to clean my house, I don't have time to be with my kids because I'm doing service. I don't have time to take care of the other people in our lives. And again, I still find this. It's happening, even among people in their 20s and so forth and so on. It's something that goes on all the time. How many of you have experienced this kind of thing? Okay. And what's difficult about this is I find that when you try to convince people otherwise, they're not very convincible. That they've really bought into this idea. That's like Prabhupada said, Arjuna wanted to use Krishna consciousness as a skillful excuse. So the people, they've gotten to a point that they're using their Krishna consciousness as an excuse to be neglectful of the other people in their lives. And this ties in even more, Namamrita, to what you were saying, neglecting our own self. So thinking that renunciation and detachment means my own, my social needs, my intellectual needs, my physical needs, all of my needs can be neglected. I don't have to sleep. Poor guy. I don't have to sleep. He usually sleeps. He just wasn't sleeping to take care of the festival. But we had devotees who didn't sleep. They only slept 4 hours a night, year after year after year, and then they got all kinds of diseases because they were doing it artificially. They weren't eating properly, and then they got sick. And what's really interesting about this kind of neglect, it's sort of like you're forcing yourself with willpower, isn't it? You're just kind of forcing, in the name of detachment, you're forcing yourself like you're getting this train through this desert of hard-heartedness and neglect and repression and irresponsibility. But the problem is that our needs are still present and they tend to just overwhelm us. And we've seen this happen so many times when someone thinks, well, that's all my end. I just have to repress it and I have to neglect it. And then all those needs reassert themselves. Yes? Have we seen this? We've seen this in so many other people, and we may have seen it in ourselves. We push ourselves and push ourselves. Well, I can't do anything. That's Maya. I can only do something that's Krishna conscious. And we're defining Krishna consciousness very, very narrowly. The problem is not that we don't want to be in Maya. The problem is how we're defining our Krishna consciousness. We're defining our Krishna consciousness as something that's hard-hearted, something that's repressive, something that's irresponsible materially. We're defining it in that way, and that definition is wrong. And because it's wrong, it eventually catches up with us. And we can't maintain it because it's not the real thing. If it was the real thing, we could maintain it. So we're going to look now at two solutions in a very general way. As I say, don't worry, we will get specific, and we're going to do some exercises. So you are going to be left, my goal is with each of the 5 seminars, you're going to be left with something that you can apply in your life now. Okay? So don't worry if with my general solutions you say, oh, that's too general. Okay, so the first problem is the wrong definition of Krishna consciousness and Maya. That's the first part of the problem. We're not identifying what is Maya properly. We're seeing God only as separate from the world. Okay? So just like with this sort of conception, now, in Western theology, this is called seeing God only as transcendent. The world is evil. The world is bad. God is over there, and He's good. Right? So in this kind of conception, what would you see as material? In that wrong conception, what would you see as material? Family. What else? Work. Your nature. What? Education, money, exercise, recreation. What else? Management. Medicine. Oh my goodness. There are religious groups who think like that, who think medicine is material. Interesting. Anything else? Movies. Relationships. The body. Music. Dancing. Food. All right. And what would be spiritual? Ooh. What would be spiritual? A temple. What else? Huh? Your guru. What else? Worship. Chanting. Right? Scripture. Holy places. Only if you don't shop. So you can see with this kind of a conception, a lot of your day you'd feel would be draining, right? Like, what am I doing this? I should just be praying. I should just be chanting. This is one of my favorite quotes in this regard. Now, by the way, if you think there's some aspects of this I'm not touching on in this seminar, you're right, because I'm going to touch on some aspects of this in the other seminars. We have a seminar about how to see Krishna everywhere in the world and everything, how to see Krishna personally everywhere in the world. That's going to be tomorrow. So we're going to be looking at some things there as well. And also this afternoon we're looking at how to get free from Maya. So this is the positive one. How to be into Krishna, and that's going to be how to be out of Maya. We're going to be looking at some of these quotes there too. The existence of Maya is only within the mind. And I have a number of other nice quotes about this as well. So what do you think that means? What I'd like to ask you guys to do is work with no more than 4 people. So anywhere from 2 to 4. And if you're a real introvert, you don't have to work with anybody. You can do it by yourself. There's now been the rise of the introvert, the very quiet rise of the introverts in modern society that are protesting. Everyone's so they've all become introverts. No, there is a rising tide of very quiet introverted protests from the introverts. That the emphasis that we've been putting on group work. You know, when I went to school, it was all very quiet work at your desks, and you just listen to the teacher. And then we really push group work. So if any of you really don't like group, I don't like to work in groups, then just work on your own. That's fine. There were blank papers and a few of those really cute little mini sharpened pencils right by the door. So if you yourself do not have anything to write on or anything to write with, and you would like to avail yourself of one of those, please go ahead and do so. And I'd like you to just talk, just 5 minutes or so. What do you think this means? What do you think Srila Prabhupada, Lord Brahma, means by this? The existence of Maya is only within the mind. Okay? So if you could please work on your own, or work with a buddy, or work with a group. No more than 4 people. And just, what do you think this means?
Maya itself is not independent. Maya is the shadow of Krishna. It's the energy of the Krishna. And as Krishna says, that he is present in each even particle, in each atom. So there is, when we see other people or other things, Krishna is present. So it's our view, whether the world view, whether we see Maya or we see Krishna.
Oh, very nice. Thank you so much.
That's
Anybody else like to share? Yes.
Hare Krishna. I was trying to understand what does it mean. From my perspective, I think there is a relationship between Maya and mind.
Okay.
That's what I feel. Like for someone, like for example, watching a movie might be Maya. For me, it might not be Maya. So that's what I might be wrong, but that's what I think. There's a relationship between Maya and mind.
Okay. Thank you. Yes.
We thought of how in the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that a person is made of his or her faith. And according to the conditioning each person has, that the mind perceives variously in the world. And then somebody brought up the verse from the second canto of Bhagavatam, Ritirtam yat pratyeta yat pratyeta chatmani tadvidyata mayo mayam yatabaso yatatamaha. That whatever you perceive that's separate from me is my illusory energy. And one more we thought of was the Bhayam Dvitiya Binidbesha Tasya, that as soon as you see something, everything is God and is within God, but as soon as you see Dvitiya, something separate, then fear arises and you're in Maya.
I like that. The fear arises. If everyone could hold on to that fear arises, that will be an important point that we'll get to. Yes?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was thinking that of the example, kind of a crude example, but for instance, you could be in a temple, but you could be thinking of being in the casino, or you could be in the casino thinking, I should be in front of Radha Vrindaban Chandra. What's wrong with me?
It's interesting you say that, because Prabhupada was asked once, do you make advancement faster if you're living in a temple? And Prabhupada said that depends on whether or not his mind is on another subject matter. Now, of course, if you're in the casino thinking, why don't I get to the temple? I remember once overhearing a conversation between two of my godbrothers. So one of them said, well, you know, my heart's at Mangalartik. And he said, why don't you bring the rest of your body? Somebody else? Yes, over here.
It's also a matter of intention. So someone may do something just to blow up their false ego for prestige, and someone might do it as a humble offering.
Okay. Very nice. Anybody else? Yes.
Yes, actually, one of the points has already been made, that Maya is still part energy of Krishna. So, expanding on that further, it's like we came up with that division of things into material and spiritual is simply wrong. There's nothing material, nothing spiritual, specifically, exclusively. You know, that's like you can make anything material into spiritual, you can make anything spiritual into material.
It's so interesting that you say that, because although Srila Prabhupada says statements like that frequently, and although they're in the Shastra, I think many times we just sort of say, oh, whatever. You know? Some other quotes, which I didn't put in this particular presentation, was that Prabhupada said, to those who are fully Krishna conscious, there is no material world. They just don't see a material world. They see it as Krishna's energy. They're not perceiving it as material. It's nice, Sanatana Goswami in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita talks about Gopu Kumar, that once he attains to perfection, that he explains that he's going back and forth between the material and spiritual worlds. He's with Krishna's pastimes in the spiritual world, then he's with Krishna's pastimes in the material world. And he said the only time he knows is the difference is when he's coming and going. That when he's participating in the Leela in the material world, you can say, well, but Urmila, he's a pure devotee, and he's participating in Krishna's Leelas in the material world. Now, I'd like to have a little caveat here, and I think it's something that we need to be very careful of. We talked about this sort of perspective as being one where you really see God as only transcendent, right? God's over there, and the material world's over there. But then there's another way of looking at things, God as totally immanent. Like you were saying, God's in every particle, God's in everything, everywhere. And yes, that's a fact. You see, both are true. We have the Sachinta Beta Beta Tattva. Both are true. God is totally separate. You can say God and the world completely, absolutely different. And you can also say God and the world are completely, absolutely the same. That God and his energies are non-different. Now, there's a problem when you take this opposite view of only immanence also. So when you have the one view of God as only transcendent, then all of a sudden 90% of the things we do in our life are disconnected with God. And we can't find any spiritual happiness in them. When you take the view that God is only immanent, then it seems to lead to a sort of giving yourself permission to do anything and calling it spiritual. So you see that also. I remember when I was at college, when I was first taking up Krishna consciousness, and one of my friends said, yeah, everything's spiritual. When I smoke, it's spiritual, So one has to be aware of that also. That Krishna is a person, he has things that he likes and he has things that he doesn't like. And there's certain activities which it's pretty difficult to do them spiritually. I mean, if you're Garuda, you can eat snakes. If you're Garuda, you can eat snakes. It's okay. But for most of us, if we're eating snakes, it's going to put our consciousness into illusion. So there's certain activities. Although everything is Krishna and everything is Krishna's energy, there are certain gross activities that if we do them, it will put our mind into Maya. And therefore, we're asked to follow 4 principles. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. Why? Because as soon as we do those things, our ability to understand Krishna in the world is going to be compromised. Unless you're Garuda, and then you can eat snakes and not be compromised. Do you understand? So Garuda can do that. But for most of us, we can't do that. And we see even the great devotees, they don't generally engage in those things because they know Krishna doesn't like them. Does that make sense to everybody? You don't see great saintly persons doing those kind of things. Or other, like lying, cheating, stealing. These things, although again we can say that, well, everything's spiritual, it shouldn't matter what I do. But because God is also a separate person, he has certain things which particularly please him and certain things that don't. So how to get this vision that Krishna is everywhere and working to please him is really the secret here. So our first thing we want to change our understanding of is that real Krishna consciousness means that I see that everything is Krishna's. Everything is Krishna's. I don't see anything separate from Krishna. Nothing, ever. Prabhupada said Krishna consciousness is not narrow or stereotyped. Whatever we see it has some relationship to Krishna. Now, what this means is, this is the first of the 2 really important points that we're covering today. If everything is related to Krishna, and everything is Krishna's energy, that means that there must be a way of dealing with things that are pleasing to Krishna. There must be some mission or purpose. So this is the first big psychological switch on a macro level. Everything is Krishna's energy. Krishna is everywhere. Everything belongs to him. Therefore, there must be some way of interacting with everything, everyone, every time, every place, every circumstance that's in harmony with Krishna. There's got to be. Does this make logical sense to everybody? Right? If this is Krishna's energy, if Krishna's present here in every atom, this belongs to him, in one sense it is him, there must be a way of dealing with this that's in harmony with what it is. That's the essential feature of truth, dealing with things in harmony with what it is, rather than out of harmony with what it is. I mean, it just sounds like, well, duh. But that's what gets us into all of our trouble. And I always use the example of if you try to walk through a wall instead of a door, then you're not acting in harmony with the way the builder and the architect made the building. And it's not their fault that you hurt your head. You know, they didn't want you to walk through the door and the wall. And we find this with bugs. Yes, you've gotten bugs stuck in your house, and they try to get out of a screen or a glass. I've had some bugs try to get out of a mirror. You know, and they're really persistent about it. Have you noticed this? They resist, like anything, your efforts to help them. And if they're a stinging insect, you know, you help them very gingerly. And they're highly resistant. In fact, they'll attack you. And I've had many times where I get the bug and I get it to the doorway and it flies back to the screen. Yes? And after a while, you're just like, oh, well, I got to do other things with my life other than save this bug. So what it means is that you act in harmony with the way things are meant to be. You see, if everything's Krishna and everything's Krishna's energy, then everything has a purpose and a function. Just like with our bodies, everything in our body has some purpose. Every once in a while, the doctors say, "Oh, this is an old organ, doesn't have a purpose," and then later they find a purpose for it. Yes, you know that. Like they've recently found a perfect purpose for the appendix. They found that what happens is that the body, I'm not a doctor, this is just what I've read. They found that the body stores beneficial bacteria in the appendix, and so if there's some disease that decimates the good bacteria in the colon, that the appendix will then release part of its store again and repopulate the intestines. But for a long time they thought, this doesn't have any function, and I'm one of these generation sans tonsils. You have a lot of sore throats. What do you need it for anyway? And who knows what they're actually needed for. But everything in our body has some function. Right? And the same thing, everything in the universal body. So there's a lot of the Bhagavatam that's dedicated to the universal form. Where in the Bhagavatam? 2nd canto primarily, also 12th canto. So there's a lot of the Bhagavatam and 8th canto that's about the universal form, understanding the universe as the body of God, understanding that everything here. So that understanding, we shouldn't get into the problem of the immanence. Oh, whatever I do is spiritual because everything is spiritual. But rather we see everything has its purpose. There's something that would be favorable to Krishna in this time, in this place, with this person, with this thing, in terms of my behavior, in terms of my thoughts, in terms of my emotions, in terms of my desires. There's a mission. And of course, this is the whole concept of yukta vairagya. So, okay, here's a nice quote. This is from the purport of Bhagavad Gita 5.2. Prabhupada writes, action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruit of action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which entails a risk of falling. Interesting. Action in Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada says, Bhagavad Gita purport 5.2, is always superior to renunciation. Here he's talking about just a dry renunciation. Renunciation of things that shouldn't be renounced or that I can't renounce. Okay, now we're going to look at our second big area, and that is our personal identity. So the first thing is just the world. How do we perceive the world? How do we perceive our outer reality? Have we taken our outer reality and said, okay, all this is just, irredeemably material, and only these few activities are spiritual? Now I want to look at ourselves. How do we identify ourselves? So this time I'd like you to work individually. If you can just write down all the different ways that you identify yourself. Who are you? If someone asks, who are you? What's your list? Okay? Please just do this by yourself. 1, 2, 3, go. Identities. Oh my goodness. All right. I'd like you to look at your list and see, are there any identities there that are still going to be true when you're in Goloka Vrindavan with Krishna? If any of those identities are still going to be true when you're in Goloka Vrindavan with Krishna, can you circle those? Now, all the rest of them are going to apply to what? Our what? Our body or our mind. Our body or our mind. They're not our real identities. And there's a very interesting step-by-step procedure that happens because of our identity. Now, this is a particular phenomena that's been noted in psychological studies, and it's particularly studied by advertisers and politicians, people who want you to do something that you might not do otherwise. Now, it might be something that's good. We're not saying that all advertisers and politicians want you to do things that are bad, but people who make propaganda, people who are politicians, advertisers, they look at how are we going to get people to buy this thing, to make this change. And again, it can be a good thing. It might be wearing seatbelts. It might be not littering on the highway. It might be buying a particular kind of toothpaste. It could be all kinds of things. And what they found is that they have to appeal to identity. They appeal to identity. Because the way we function is like this. We have our particular identity. I am. Okay, so all of us are either a son or a daughter, right? We all have parents. So that's going to be, I assume that was one of your identities that you put down there. So everybody has parents, at least so far. In scientific advancement, we don't have anybody without parents yet. And, we might have an identity as a spouse, or maybe we're a parent ourselves, or as an aunt or an uncle, or we have brother or sister. So we have that kind of family identity. Then we may have a kind of work identity, some organizational identity, some, political affiliation, something like that. So then up here, we have the ideal of that identity. So if you say, okay, well, I'm a middle-aged American husband and father of 2 who's a banker. And then you think, well, what would that person ideally do in such and such situation? Right, so I was talking to Rukmini about this the other day with regard to someone that I visited their home. They had just bought the home, and so we were having a meal at a small table in the dining area. And the husband said, well, we just bought this home so people will understand that we're eating all of our meals in the breakfast nook. But, once you've had a house for a couple years, people expect you to have a real dining room table. And that means there's an idealized identity. I'm a middle-class American living in suburbia, and a middle-class American living in suburbia has a dining room table within 2 years of buying a house. You understand? And that's actually the way we think. So one example of this was in Texas. There was a big problem with littering on the highways. And they tried all kinds of campaigns, and still they found that most of the people who were littering were young males. So they had a campaign that looked at the identity of young male Texans. So in these campaigns, they would have some big Texas football player. You know, there was some star. And he'd go to the side of the highway and he'd pick up a soda can or a beer can and pick it up and crush it and go, "Don't mess with Texas." And it worked. Why? Because people are thinking, "I'm a Texan. You don't mess with Texas." And they started relating that to throwing litter on the highways in Texas. You understand? Then they said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. There was some island in the Caribbean where there was a bird that was going extinct because people were eating it. It was a bird that only lived on that island. And the way they got people to stop killing it is they made it one of the national birds. So if you were really patriotic, this became your bird, you know, and you weren't going to eat it anymore. And my friends, this is how we make our decisions. When we decide, should I eat this? Should I buy this? Should I do this? Should I go there? Should I say this? All of the things we're deciding are based on our identity. I'm thinking, okay, well, you know, I am a daughter. What does a good daughter do? Okay, that's what I should do. Does this all make sense to everybody? This is how we function. Now, you can understand that if we have the wrong identity, we're going to make the wrong decisions, and the decisions we make will not be spiritually enlivening for us. So our first problem was not seeing the world as having a mission and a purpose, not seeing what we're doing in the world. What I'm doing, I don't see the purpose in it. I don't see the transcendental spiritual mission in it. I see, oh, I'm doing this, you know, I have to brush my teeth. I have to take Tylenol, like the medicine one. You know, I have to brush my teeth and take Tylenol because I'm such a fool that I came to the material world and rebelled against Krishna, and this is all Maya, and if I was really transcendental, I wouldn't do any of this stuff. We don't see the purpose and the mission. And another problem is we don't see the right identity. So I'm thinking the reason I'm doing this is I'm going to attach this, and I'm going to attach this, and I have this problem and that problem. And therefore, we end up with sadness and fear. As Vaisheshika Prabhu said, we end up with fear. Now, why is that? Krishna talks about a cycle or a relationship in the Bhagavad Gita. What is the relationship Krishna talk about in the Bhagavad Gita? And one of the items is fear. 3 parts in the relationship. One of them is fear. It is sort of. Definitely. And what are the other 2 parts of it? Anger, good. Well, lust, attachment. Attachment, fear, and anger. So we get attached to, what are we attached to? We're attached to, I am a this, I am a this, I'm a this, I'm a this, and therefore if I'm a good this, I'm going to do this and this and this in the world. And we then see the world as a vehicle for us to be a good this and that. The world, the mission of the world becomes the things in the world, the people of the world. They're the means by which I can be a good banker, I can be a good mother, I can be a good husband, you know, like that. Do you all understand that? Do you get that? So I have a false identity. I am a daughter. Okay? I want to be a good daughter. By the way, this can apply even to terrible identities, like I want to be a good criminal. Just by the way. It's not only for positive identities. I want to be the most clever criminal. You know, I want to be a really good drug dealer and not get caught. So it is not only for pious identities. So I'm a daughter. I want to be a good daughter. And therefore I see the people in the world, the animals, the objects, they've become part of my mission to be a good daughter. Does everybody follow this? I'm using everything, okay, I'm going to use it for that, and to be a good mother, and to be a good friend, and to be a good banker, and to be a good whatever. Okay. So then I'm attached personally, I'm attached. These things, these relationships, these activities, they're going to enable me to be a good this and that. Does it work? Does it work? Hardly. Sometimes. Sometimes people come, on your gravestone maybe. John Smith, beloved son, husband, father. But generally during our life, it doesn't work so well. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But a lot of the times it doesn't work. We seem to fall short. Other people say, and they may not say it directly. They may not directly say, I think you're a terrible husband. But if they say, I have asked you 10 times to fix the car, and what are they saying? You're not a very good husband. You're not a very good father. Look, that report was due on Friday at 3 o'clock. It is now Tuesday at 10. Where's the report? Again, they may not be coming straight out and saying, you're a terrible employee. But that's the message that we're getting. And so we're constantly afraid, I'm not going to be able to be the ideal of my identity. It's not going to happen. It just won't happen. I won't be able to achieve it. I won't get the little thing on my headstone. Or they'll say it just falsely, just to say something, because they think they should be nice to me when I'm dead. But they won't actually think that way. My kids will think, oh, what a terrible mother you are. And the other members of the Hare Krishna movement, they'll think, boy, you're not a very good devotee. Right? Look at those dhoti pleats, Prabhu. I mean, how are you thinking you are? So we're thinking like that. And therefore we're afraid. We're afraid we're going to lose the means to be our good identity in this world. We won't get what we need. Other people won't appreciate us. We won't appreciate ourselves. And then we become sad. We become angry. And then we become, going right back to the beginning of our seminar, drained. We're like, oh man, I thought if I married a devotee and chanted Hare Krishna to my kids and had a deity in my house that I'd feel enlivened. And man, I'm just drained. But the reason is that we're thinking, I have a devotee wife and I am a devotee husband. That will make me a very good husband. Now I will be an even better husband than I could have been if I was not a devotee. And then, when our wife asks us why we haven't fixed the car right? I saw one little joke, my dear wife, I know I have to fix the stuff. You don't have to remind me every 6 months, right? You've seen that one? So I'm thinking that just because I'm a devotee, somehow, and then we're like, oh, it isn't working. I should just be a renunciate. Why did I ever get in the world in the first place? I should just go to the bank of Radhakund and chant Hare Krishna, and then I'll be enlivened, as if everybody sitting on the bank of Radhakund and chanting Hare Krishna is enlivened, which is a whole other topic. But we're going into it with a false sense of identity and therefore a false mission. Okay. And this is what causes all those problems we talked about. Right? Then out of frustration and anger and fear, and we think, oh, well, really Krishna consciousness means being hard-hearted. It just means neglectful. It doesn't, I'm just going to not take care of anything in the world and just reject it all as Maya. So I use this slide a lot in my presentations. I really like it. And whoever did this, all kudos to them. So this is a changing our identity, like we had to change the idea of mission. And again, I know I'm talking very generally, and if your mind is going, but she's not giving specifics. I will. If I'm still in this body and functional, then I will do that. And so this is just on a general principle that I change my identity to I'm Krishna's servant. Now, it may have to be done in a secret agent way. So why do I say secret agent? Because you can't necessarily present everybody else like that. If you go to your wife and say, look, I'm not really your husband. I'm just Krishna's servant. Yeah, I may not go over very well. So especially at your job, that may, but even with your devotee family members, it may not work very well. You know, I mean, it wasn't that I was traveling with my granddaughter recently, and at one point she wanted to do something, and I told her she couldn't. And I told her she couldn't because she was my responsibility. I said, look, you know, you're my service. I'm responsible for you. And later on she said, so Grandma, I'm just a responsibility. Oh, you know, I said, I didn't mean it like that. So sometimes if we say things like that to people, if we say, well, you know, you're my service, you're my responsibility, then you're like, oh, I'm just a burden. You don't really like me. You're not doing this because you want to. So therefore it has to be sometimes a secret agent. You know, you're going to still say to your wife, you're the most beautiful woman in the world. Right? So you're still going to say that to your wife. I hope. You've already saying that to your wife. But internally, your identity is not, I'm saying this because I'm a good husband. It's, I'm saying this because I'm Krishna's agent. And I give the example, just like if you went to North Korea, you wouldn't go into North Korea and say, I'm an American spy. Right? So generally in this world, we're not openly acting as Krishna's agents. Why? Because in this world, people are not open to the idea. Yes? And I have to say, even sometimes when you're dealing with the other devotees, you can't be totally open about being Krishna's agent. Even sometimes with the other devotees, you may have to have this cover of this other identity. But it has to be just a cover. You know, if you're a secret agent, you may go in there as an English teacher, and you're going to be a good English teacher. Otherwise, you're going to get thrown out of the country for being a bad English teacher. But you're not in North Korea to be an English teacher. You're in North Korea to find out government secrets to send back to your country. Does this make sense? Okay. So if we solve these two problems, our mission and our identity, then we're going to be able to have everything that we do in our life, provided we're not doing anything grossly sinful. I'm not talking about you can go murder people or get drunk and be spiritually enlivened by that. But other than that kind of thing, you'll be able to have all the things in your life be spiritually enlivening. Okay, we're going to look now at some quotes that will help us get into how do we do this specifically, and what is the mood. So this is a nice quote from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. In our last seminar that will be on Sunday morning, we're going to go into quite a lot of the songs of Bhaktivinoda Thakur. That last seminar is on surrender. What is surrender and how do I surrender? And there we're particularly going to be referencing Bhaktivinoda Sharanagati. So this is a little taste today, but if you like this kind of stuff, we'll be doing a lot more of this on Sunday. So this is from his Sharanagati. Why don't we read this together? O Lord, nothing further remains that may be called mine, declaring that my wealth, family members, home, and wife are truly yours. I continue as a mere servant to dutifully protect them. For the purpose of your service, I will earn money and bear the expense of maintaining your household. I see I left out a period. I'm sorry. So here we see about mission. Bhaktivinoda is seeing that my family life is part of the Lord's mission. I have some mission here. I have some business here. And I've told this story many times, so forgive me if you've already heard this. But many, many years ago in the old New York Temple on 55th Street, I had read something in the Sankirtan newsletter from one ISKCON sannyasi saying that every time we go to a Bhagavatam class, a Shastra class, we should try to find something relevant for our own life. So I was very excited by that, and I went to class the next day saying, okay, what am I going to find to be relevant to my own life? And the temple president, the temple commander, I still remember his name and his face. Anyway, he was giving the class. And the entire class, he spoke about that if you really want to be Krishna conscious, you should just surrender to your immediate authority in the temple, which for almost everybody was him. So most of the class, I was just kind of going, really? Come on. So I was mostly doing that, and at that time, our oldest child was 3, and I was expecting our second child. And I was sitting there thinking, this has nothing to do with me. We live down the street. We have our own family. I don't have any authority in the temple. And then I thought, okay, all right, well, I said I was going to somehow or other relate this to me. So how does this relate to me? And all of a sudden I thought, oh, our house is also a temple. I thought my husband is the temple president and I'm the temple commander. We have our little ashram. And that one moment was such a game changer for me. All of a sudden I saw my family differently. And I must say, until that time, in those days in ISKCON, if you were married, especially married with children, you were at the lowest possible level of Krishna consciousness. You were the dregs of the dregs of the dregs. It's like you're married and you have children. You're not full-time books. I'm like, no, just part-time. So it was really intense. And who will take charge of maintaining your large family? Whether you are involved in material activities or become completely renounced, you 5 brothers are all my eternal servants, birth after birth. So here, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was saying, you have a mission of maintaining these other devotees. You're not working just to take some of the money and give it as a donation to somebody else. Your use of your money to maintain your family is also, he was saying, part of my mission. Yes? And let's take this a little broader. Would we like it if the president of our country was a full-on committed devotee of Krishna? Would we like that? No matter how you like, whatever you think of our current president. Would you prefer that there was a devotee? Yes? What about heads of all the states of the world? Would that be nice? If the head of North Korea and Russia and Venezuela, if they were all devotees? Would we like the head of Monsanto to be a devotee? Would that be nice? The head of Walmart? Would we like it if... We would like devotees everywhere. And this is, if we look at Bhagavad Gita, why is Krishna telling Arjuna to fight? What does Krishna want? What? He wants Yudhisthira to be in charge. He wants the management of government to be done by Rajarshis, by saintly persons. Krishna actively wants, that all, at least the leaders in every field, be devotees. That's what he wants. Wouldn't it be nice if there were prasadam restaurants everywhere? Right? Wouldn't that be lovely? It's interesting when you're in like Alachua in Gainesville, the day before Ekadasi, there's notices in the supermarket. Seriously, like by the potatoes, Tomorrow is Ekadasi. Yeah. And they'll put up signs. This is Ekadasi friendly stuff in the supermarkets because there's so many devotees there. Wouldn't that be nice if that was all over the world? So there's a mission. It's not just the money we make from our job, and it's not just the time we spend with our family directly chanting Hare Krishna. There's a mission. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has a mission. Whether it's at the level of our family, which might be just one other person or 10 other people, where it's at the level of our career, where it's at the level of the little plot of land that's around our house. What are we doing with that would advance the mission of Lord Chaitanya? I think many of us think the mission of Lord Chaitanya is only when I take my body to an official legal temple of the Hare Krishna movement and I do some service there. But this is it's so funny that my mother pointed this out back in 1973. And when she pointed it out, I thought, oh, she's just being critical. But she was right. That we weren't going to have a society just by having everybody live in an ashram. That we were going to have a society by having people become expert in all the different areas of the world as devotees. But of course it has to be integrated. If you're just, I'm an expert banker and I'm an expert teacher and I'm an expert whatever, and my devotional life is just my religion over there, that wouldn't do it, would it? It has to be where we integrate and see what is the mission here. Okay, we're going to go on now, and the purport to this particular verse, Srila Prabhupada is quoting Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So here he's saying that one should remember that he's eternally a servant of Krishna. This is the identity point. I am a secret agent. I am a servant of Krishna. A servant. That means I have some service here. All right, going on in the purport. Again, Prabhupada quoting Bhaktisiddhanta. Whether we're working with money or whether we're working as a renunciate, again, I have some service to do. I'm a servant. There is a service for me. And again, going on in this purport. Both of these are external. Okay, now we're combining identity and mission. If I'm a servant and there's a purpose for everything, what I'm supposed to find as a servant is how do I please and satisfy Krishna in this situation. And if you say, well, how do I satisfy Krishna? We'll get there. Just, oh, by the way, any of you chant Gayatri, the solar noon here is at 1:18. So what I'm going to do is break at 1:15. Because lunch is at 1:30 and I'm supposed to go to 1:30, but I'm not going to go to 1:30. I'm going to break at 1:15. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. I went and looked it up. So then what's the benefit going on in this purport? Even if one is involved in great material affairs, another period I have missing here, he will not become attached. Because what is this attachment from? This attachment is from the wrong identity and the wrong mission. All right? The problem is when I forget I'm a servant of Krishna. Now, when I forget I'm a servant of Krishna, I don't just think I'm nothing. I think I'm something else. Yes? Everybody follows this? Okay. Now, everything becomes spiritually enlivened. If I'm always conscious, Krishna is the master, I'm an eternal servant, I'm liberated, and what's with periods with me and this stuff? I don't know. I don't know what I did with this. My God. And I've used these slides for years in different places. Somehow I never caught it till today. Liberated person in any condition, and nothing will entangle us. What does that mean, my dear friends? It means that we will be spiritually enlivened always. Okay, now we're going to do some work with this slide. This, for me, this particular letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jayapataka Maharaj in 1972, I have just found that if we live our life by this, okay, look, everything that Prabhupada said everywhere is wonderful and ecstatic and perfect, and any sentence you can take from Srila Prabhupada is a life changer. But I think all of us have certain things that we go, wow, this is really a guide for me. And you may not feel that way about this quote, but for me, this particular quote, even though it's just in a letter to a particular person, I feel that it's capturing the essence of how to do this specifically. And you've noticed I put numbers here because I found 4 main points. Okay, let's read this together. The secret of surrendering to Krishna is that such surrendered devotee sees that everything is part of Krishna's plan. Whatever is meant to be, I am doing. Let me do it with my full attention to every detail. Let me become absorbed in such service, never mind what it is. Let all other considerations be forgotten, and only my desire to do the best for Krishna's alone pleasure is my motive. Oh, I know what happened. I went to one slide in the presentation and took out the periods. That's what happened. And I thought I was just doing it one slide. I took out the periods from the whole presentation. It's like, how did all my periods get out of there? Okay, sorry about that. Didn't notice that till just now. All right, so these are the 4 specific things to do. These are the 4 keys. If we do these, I will absolutely guarantee you, absolutely, money back guarantee. Oh well. That you will find everything you do to be enlivening. Prabhupada says in the end of Bhagavad Gita, when Sanjaya is remembering the universal form, and he says, I'm feeling a thrill. And there Prabhupada says, not just for one moment, but at every moment, one will feel a thrill. So how? I found this is a way to do it. This is how you do it. And this formula works even in difficult, painful, awful, terrible, everything has gone wrong. Nothing has gone according to my plan. Everybody hates me. I hate myself. The world's crumbling. It doesn't matter. It works in those situations. What to speak of in the it's a sunny day and everybody's saying nice things about me kind of situations. So what I'd like us to do with this is, first I'd like to do some group work with this and then some individual work. So I'd like us to get into groups and just take one of these. So, and each group, and again, if you really don't like to work in groups, just work on your own, and that's okay. And we won't force you to work in a group. So I'd like each group to take one of these and talk about what does this mean on a practical level. It's probably best if you take a specific situation. Take a situation that's a common one. It might be, cooking for your family or going to work, commuting to work, dealing with some clerk in a store. Pick some situation that all of us are going to encounter in our lives, some universal situation, and how you would apply this particular thing, just that one thing. Everybody clear what I'm saying? Should we maybe do it together? Let's do it together first, and then we'll do it in groups. Okay, does everybody shop sometimes? Does that everybody shop? Is there anyone here who never shops? Okay. And so when you shop, you've got to deal with maybe you're shopping and you're looking for something and you can't find it, and you're trying to find somebody to help you in the store. Okay? Is that a pretty mundane thing to be doing? All right. So, and you're really having trouble finding this. You can't find anyone in the store who helps you. And the first 3 people that you ask, they don't know anything. Somehow it's a kind of store where they hire people who don't know anything about the store. You ever been in one of those stores? The qualification to work there is abysmal ignorance about what exists in the store. Oh, you know something about the store? No, sorry, you can't be hired to work here. So imagine it's one of those places and you've already asked 3 people and you're going up to the 4th person and you're asking them. Okay, so give me some idea about number 1. And you could even be late for something. Maybe you're supposed to, you had to buy something to be back at a certain time, but other people are depending on you to bring this thing back. So, okay, so you have some meeting you're going to, or your family's depending on you, or there's some service at the temple you got to bring the thing back for, and you've asked 3 people, and none of them have helped you, and you're just about walking up to ask a 4th person. How would we apply number 1? Krishna is delaying me, okay? Some other thoughts? Yes? Okay. Yes? Oh, okay. What else? Okay, I get a chance to develop humility. What else? Yes. Tolerance. Yes. I don't know what the reason is, but I trust. I have some trust. Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. Okay, so he wants me, instead of that I need to ask for help, he wants me to develop, he wants me to be resourceful. Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. You see that sign in the temple every day, right? Your inability to plan ahead does not constitute my crisis, or something like that. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I mean, I sometimes feel like that if I'm ordering something online and I've done research for an hour, and just when I'm about to order it, the internet goes down. And you're like, maybe I'm not supposed to buy that. Maybe that would be the wrong. I mean, I found in these sort of situations also, sometimes Krishna wants me to behave a certain way with other people. He wants other people to see how does his servant behave. Sometimes I'm there for a while because I'm supposed to meet a certain person. Sometimes I'm also being delayed for a particular reason. I mean, I really thought about this one time. I was driving from Hillsborough, North Carolina to Atlanta. It's a 6-hour drive. And near the end of the drive, the road there, at least it was at those times, it was 70 miles an hour. And I was the only one on the road. There were no other cars. And then another car comes on the other side really, really fast, coming towards me, jumps over the median, and goes right in front of my car, bounces on the road, and goes into the woods. And that car went in front of me 1 yard. 1 yard was in front of me. And I really thought about the split-second timing of life. You know, if I had been 1 second faster, then, my dear friends, I would not be standing here right now talking to you today. I would either be in another body, or I'd be in a wheelchair or something. I mean, it would have gone right into the driver's side of the car. And it just made me think about the split-second timing of things. Or sometimes, you know, you just meet somebody who changes your life, right? And you just coincidentally meet them somewhere. I mean, it's happened to me that, I don't remember exactly, but I remember I was going somewhere, and all of a sudden I thought, I want to check out that shop. And I went in the shop, and I spent 10, 15 minutes there. I bought nothing. It was a complete waste of time. I thought, why did I want to go in that shop? And then 10 minutes later, I met somebody who ended up having connections, and that changed all sorts of things in my life. And I realized that going in that shop made it so I met that person. If I hadn't had that delay of 10 minutes, I wouldn't have met them. So that there's some sort of plan. Everything is part of Krishna's plan. Whatever is meant to be, I am doing. What about that part of it? Whatever is meant to be, that I am doing. It sounds so new agey, doesn't it? This is why I put up the quote, because I think if I just tell devotees that, they'll say, boy, Urmila's really gone off the rails. Whatever is meant to be, that I am doing. But that's what Prabhupada said. What does that mean? Okay, being very much in the present moment. What else? I'm in the perfect situation. Doesn't always seem like that, does it? Krishna's in control. Yes? I'm an agent. What? Faith, yes. Lesson, okay. You know, how often do we think exactly the opposite of that? Is it? I should be doing something else. I should be someplace else. The reason I'm not Krishna conscious is that I'm in the wrong place and time. I have to change the place and time and activity. But at this moment, whatever I'm doing is what I'm supposed to be doing. And if I were together, next time I teach this, I'll do this. But there's a really nice book by C.S. Lewis, a very famous Christian author. Probably many of you are familiar with the Narnia books. And he has another book called Screw Tape Letters, which I am in good company with Jai Dvaita Swami and Ravinda Sri Prabhu in really liking that book. But it's an interesting book. But anyway, there's one section of that book where he talks about time. And he talks about how most of us think that we own our time. And we think, the time I spend working is a grievous tax I have to pay. The time I spend for my family or other things, it's all like an imposition on me. I should really be able to do whatever I want to do with my time. And anyone who ever asks anything of me is just imposing on me. And he says, but especially those of us who've dedicated our lives to God, especially if we've said, especially those of us who've taken initiation, those of us who said, my dear Lord, I am yours. Is our time ours? And can we create time? Anybody here able to create time? No. So the time does not belong to us. And he makes this point, it's really funny. He says, if you're already said to God, my time belongs to you, and if God appeared in front of you face to face and said, okay, for the next 24 hours you need to do whatever I say. He said, then we would be totally relieved if he said, look, for half an hour, spend your time listening to this really obnoxious lady on the train, and the rest of the day, you can do what you like. We go, oh, shh. And he said, that's really the situation we're in every single day. Our time belongs to Krishna. He can say, this is what I want you to do with your time. And the things that we feel are imposing, are difficult, if we say, Krishna's given me this to do. He's put me in this situation because he has a mission for me. He has some service for me to do. Maybe it's just to be kind. What an amazing, outrageous thought. And Krishna says that. Bhagavad Gita, 12th chapter. One who is a kind friend to all living entities is very dear to me. Maybe the only thing that I'm supposed to be right now is kind to somebody who's otherwise obnoxious and difficult. Or to be kind and patient in a difficult situation. Maybe that's all I'm meant to do. Maybe that's enough. I also like to think, I just said I'm not going to do this as group work anyway. I thought about, what's really important and valuable in life. According to our Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy, if somebody eats one piece of prasadam, then they get to take a human birth next life, right? Yes? So let's say you have a sinful, materialistic life, and you eat one prasadam cookie, or you touch the Bhagavatam, right? Prabhupada says to the book distributors, if people just say, oh, this is a very nice book, if they just appreciate, they don't even buy it. They just appreciate, right? They say it's a nice book. They just touch the book. Not only do they get a human birth, but they get a birth in a good family. Hey, think about this for a minute. With all the things they're doing in their life, they just touch the book, they just eat a cookie. Right? And if you went to that person and you said, my dear sir, my dear ma'am, what's the most important thing that you've done in your life? Do you think they're going to mention that? The most important thing that I did in my life was when, that sidewalk peddler came up to me with this book, and I looked at it and I touched it and I said, no, I don't have any money with me, but boy, that's a really beautiful book. Would anybody say that was the most important thing they did in their life? No. You know what that means? That means that we don't know what's the most important thing we're doing in our life. We don't know. Maybe it's one sentence we say to one person. I'm always astonished that often what people tell me are the most helpful parts of my classes were the tangents that I didn't plan to go on. I'll spend hours planning for a class, and then in the middle of the class, I might think of something else to say. And people come, that thing you said, and I'm thinking, I didn't plan to say that. It wasn't even really part of it. And sometimes people will come to you 10 years later and say that. Or when you served me on Janmashtami and you smiled at me and asked me how I was doing, and it turned my life around. I have a devotee who told me that when I asked her to do a particular service, that all of a sudden she felt like a worthwhile person, and she ended up starting to get free of disease that had plagued her for 10 years. And I just said, hey, could you do the service? I didn't think it was very important. Sometimes the things that other people say are the most important, we don't even remember. Does that happen to you? Somebody says, when you did this, when you said that, and you're like, oh, great. I don't even know who you are. So how do we know what's really important? Whatever is meant to be, that I am doing. The situation that I am in, right here, right now, every right here, every right now. That's the most important. Wow, what a change. Because our mind is generally going, I want to change, 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 I want to change. Right? I mean, this is about things other than sadhana. But this happens even in our sadhana, doesn't it? I got to finish this round so I can do something else. Yeah? Let me finish the Bhagavatam. So how many more pages do I said I was going to read 43 pages. Oh my God, what am I on page 41? I'm sorry. You know, can I do something else? Instead of being attentive, right? You're talking about rapt attention. But this is not just rapt attention in the Bhagavatam. And it's not just rapt attention in the Hare Krishna mantra. It's rapt attention in, and this we're going to go on to the next thing. Number 2, let me do it with my full attention to every detail. Okay, so I'm back in the store. What would that mean? Full attention to every detail. Okay, in the people interaction, right? What else would I be paying full attention to? Yes. Okay, really looking at the labels and the stuff, so really paying attention to the detail of what I'm looking for. So my task, paying full attention to the task. What else am I going to be paying full attention to? Yes. Yes, like I took all the periods out of here. I'm a good example of what not to do. Sometimes devotees get to be bad examples too. What were you going to say, Prabhu? That's very nice. So we talked about that before, being in the present. And this is also what Krishna teaches Arjuna over and 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 over. Success, failure, result, right? That what you do is you focus on your intention at the moment and your connection at the moment, and not the good or bad result. Now, going back to the beginning of this presentation, does that mean you become hard-hearted or irresponsible? Does it mean you become hard-hearted or irresponsible? We think that. Well, if I'm just focused at the present and I stop worrying about the result, then I'll be irresponsible, or I'll be uncaring. And that's what our mind tells us. You'll be irresponsible, you'll be uncaring, you have to worry. You're the doer and you control the result. And if you don't get this, you're ankara vimudha makarta hamiti manite. But Krishna said, yes. Yes, forget the past that sleeps and ne'er the future dream at all, but bear with times that are with thee in progress these shall call us. And all we ever have is the present, by the way. You know, you don't know if you're going to live to get out of the store to bring that thing back to whatever you're going to. I thought about this a lot as a Gurukul teacher, and especially, many of you know Jai Shri, who lives here in New Vrindaban. Yeah. So when we lived in Detroit, Jai Shri was our neighbor, and her children went to my nursery school. One of her children, Radha Govinda, died when she was 3. She drowned in the pool on Prabhupada's Vyas Puja Day. So she had been my student in the nursery school. My daughter's was the same age as her. And having one of my students die at a young age like that made me think always, as a Gurukul teacher, I'm not just teaching the children for what they're going to do when they graduate. My purpose in teaching them is not only, that's also there, so they'll get a good education, so when they are 20, when they are 25, it will be useful. But I thought I should teach them in such a way that they're getting benefit now. That they're connecting with Krishna now. That there's some good experience for them in the now. Because there may not be an age 25. May not happen. And am I interacting with them in such a way that we're having a Krishna conscious interaction in this moment? You know, and who's the one who's going to take care of our results, everybody? 1, 2, 3. And ain't none of us going to be able to take care of the results. You can try. Go ahead. Good luck. But the thing that we can do is that we can become absorbed in what we're doing at the moment. Now that doesn't mean, again, that you're irresponsible. Part of what you're doing at the moment is trying to get that thing back at a particular time. That's part of your absorption, but you're absorbed in the moment. What other details would we give our attention to? People, interaction, tasks, what other details? Yes? Okay. Okay, what other details? Quality of what? Okay, what other details? Oh, thank you. So our own internal state, our own internal thoughts, our own internal feelings. So I really like the gentleman said, maybe Krishna's having fun. Yes? Did he leave? The one who said Krishna's having fun. Oh, there you are. So one of the things that is interesting about being a devotee of Krishna, rather than just being a devotee of God, is that our understanding of God is that he's a 15-year-old boy. I mean, it's rather, interesting. He's not, you have a mission to do and a task to do. Do it well, my servant. It's not like that. He's like, hey, why don't you go to the brahmanas over there and ask them for something to eat? And they come back, and according to Kavi Karnapur, they say, how did nectar become salty? I mean, you told us. You have infallible instructions, and you told us to get the charity from the brahmanas. And he's like, oh, well, you know what it's like when you're a beggar. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, just please try to think about this for a minute. You're right there next to God, okay? You're next to God. He's right there. And he says, go do this. And it doesn't work. And he's like, oh, it's okay. Now try this. And a lot of us will say, well, it didn't work out the first time. I don't know. Right? But he's funny. I mean, the most outrageous is Govardhan Leela. I mean, that's like the top of the top of the top. Don't worship Indra. Why don't you worship the mountain? Later. No, right now. And so they do that. They worship a mountain. And then Indra doesn't exactly like it. The result is catastrophic. Literally catastrophic. I mean, it's literally catastrophic. And they don't say, we're not listening to you anymore. They don't say that. They don't say, that didn't work out very well. Next time we're going to worship Indra. And then when he solves the problem, he solves it by picking up a mountain. Is that a very reasonable solution for a flood? I mean, could you imagine if there was a flood and the government said, okay, we're going to pick up the mountain? You're going to be like, that's a real non sequitur, It's like, that's not going to, we should climb the top of the mountain, not go under the mountain. And he has these, and he's fun. And he's fun. So part of our attention to every detail is this attention to our inner state. Am I having fun? I was asked recently, this is true. Oops. And very recently also I was asked this. How can we make, you can deal with it later, it's fine. The pieces are both there. They're not going to walk away. Mother Urmila, how can we make Krishna consciousness fun for our children? And I said, if you are conscious of Krishna, it will be fun. And if you are not having fun, I said, I don't know who you're conscious of, but it sure ain't Krishna. You're conscious of somebody else because Krishna is fun. So one of the things that you're going to, when we say attention to my full attention to every detail, the internal thoughts and feelings are not just philosophical. I philosophically understand that there must be some plan of Krishna's here, although I can't figure out at all what it is. And I am getting more and more frustrated with this plan of Krishna. But to have fun and say, okay, all right, I am the servant of a 15-year-old boy. And what fun thing does he have in mind for me today? And it's a whole different way of looking at the world. It really is. You know, we're not just talking philosophy. We're not jnana yogis. We are bhakti yogis. We're not in Gyan yoga. Gyan yoga is a bona fide form of yoga, but it's not what we're doing. And so if when we're paying attention to every detail, if we see that we're frustrated, we're aggravated, or we're just simply dry philosophers, then we're also not really paying attention to details. Okay, now, this one, number 3. Let me become absorbed in such service, never mind what it is, missing period. Let all other considerations be forgotten. In modern psychology, what do they call this state, this psychological state? Does anyone know what the current name for this state is? When you get in this... Mindfulness. What else? I think that was the previous one. Being in the zone. Good. What else do they call it? Flow. They call it flow. When you're so totally absorbed in what you're doing that you forget about everything else. Remember we said we start at this thing? We looked at 2 elements of Ashtanga Yoga. What were the 2? Does anybody remember? I know that was a long time ago, way back at like 11:10. Pratyahara and Dharana. So here Prabhupada's talking about Pratyahara and Dharana. You're holding this conception. You have this conception. Right? What's your conception? Everything's part of Krishna's plan. What I'm doing is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, and I'm giving my full attention to every detail. You're holding that, and because you're holding that, you experience pratyahara. The material conception goes away. You no longer see the world as material. Isn't that far out? You can do that at a hardware store, at a grocery store. You don't need to go to the Himalayas and, just live on sour berries and find a deerskin to sit on and not talk to any people and, practice for 100,000 years and mechanically try to withdraw your senses. When we become absorbed, when we hold that, and we had that picture of holding a bird, you're holding it gently, you're not like strangling it. But when you hold that conception that this is Krishna's plan, he knows what he's doing, he's got me in the right place, and I start to become absorbed in the details, to do it first class, then I forget. Maybe someone will think I'm a bad wife because I didn't find this, or a bad devotee, or a bad whatever, because I didn't find this thing on time. That identity that I have to find the right thing on time and get back on time because I have to be a good this or that or the other thing, which is what's causing us all of our separate thing and our anxiety, just disappears. It just goes away. And when we do this properly, even our material miseries really kind of go away. One loses some awareness of them. Or they don't really affect you. You may still have a backache or whatever, or a toothache, but your awareness of them kind of goes away. Now, people try to artificially get in this state, I think to a large extent with modern entertainment. I think my own conviction is that a lot of the purpose of modern entertainment, computer games, movies, television, so forth, is to try to artificially enter this state of full absorption where everything else goes away. And I once had a teenage boy was visiting us with his family. He got up at 5 in the morning, went right to the computer game. I don't even know if he used the toilet. He didn't come to breakfast. He didn't change his clothes. And finally, in the afternoon, the parents said to him, "Get off the computer and eat." So this sort of imitation of this stage. You people, we're looking for that, aren't we? Aren't we looking for something that's total, that we get so absorbed that everything else goes away? And my dear friends, this is not a hard thing to do. It just takes practice. Okay, now let's look at, so I didn't write down something here for free. So let's write some things down here for free. How do we do this? How do we become so absorbed like that? Yes? Yes, of course.
As a mother of young toddlers.
Yes.
You know, it seems like it's a real skill to learn to be absorbed in Krishna's service while I'm paying attention to the details of the service. At the same time, taking the children, they're also a service, and young little boys, you can't, it seems like you never really ever take your attention off, otherwise, something will happen. So could you comment on that?
We'll look at that a little bit tomorrow at the afternoon session. Okay. We're going to look a little bit as to, because my initial answer was going to be something I'm going to talk about there, is how taking care of those little kids can immediately remind you of Krishna. But it's, again, this is my service. I'm doing it for Krishna. I'm not doing this to be a good mother or a good wife or even a good member of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. I'm doing this because Krishna's put me in this situation. Krishna's given me, he has some mission. He has some plan for me with these particular jivas. He's put me in a situation where I have these little kids running around the house. And I'm trying to cook dinner while they're running around the house and making sure they don't, put the whole roll of toilet paper into the toilet and, just spill the whole gallon of ghee all over the floor or something like that while I'm trying to cook. And I also don't want to burn what I'm cooking, and I want to have it ready on time. My husband's coming home, and, But to get out of that identity, Krishna's put me in this situation. What is he trying to have me do? And then I get into the detail of how I'm going to manage that. Okay, how am I going to manage that? Are you going to manage it perfectly? Probably not. Again, it's not the result that you're looking for. You're looking for the intention. You're looking for the mood. How am I going to manage it? How am I going to make sure that my little toddler boys feel loved and cared for and they don't kill each other or themselves? And how am I going to manage the cooking? And you get absorbed in that detail, but doing it for Krishna, which is what we're going to get to in number 4 particularly.
And another question comes to mind, Mataji.
Instead of moving away from it. And this is another, what would you say, pitfall. So when Krishna talks about the fall down sequence in Bhagavad Gita 262 and 263, does anyone know what he says in 264? Anybody? Yes? Do you know? Anybody know 264? Okay, he talks about being free of attachment and aversion. And it's very interesting that our tendency in difficult situations is to go into aversion. I don't like this situation. In this situation, I'm not very good at my material identity. I'm not getting the things that are going to really give me my attachments from my identity. I want to get rid of the situation. But not, aversion is not, that's what we covered at the very beginning. Aversion is not detachment, hard-heartedness, irresponsibility, callousness, neglect. That's not where we want to go to. We actually want to go into the situation, but as a service. I don't want to go into the situation in my false identity. I'm not going to absorb myself in the situation as trying to be a good mother and a good wife and a good this and a good that. But I'm going to go into the situation, I'm a secret agent. There's some mission here for my master. I haven't been a spy in this life, maybe another life, I don't know. But I'm sure spies don't always know exactly what they expect to find, right? They go to some meeting at the embassy and they're not quite sure. They're thinking, I might find out something here, right, that will be useful for my government. So we're kind of exploring and having fun. What's Krishna's mission for me here? Let me become absorbed in every detail and trust that Krishna's put me here for a reason. And how can I deal with everyone according to that reason? Is that all right? Does that help?
Can I ask one more question?
Well, why don't, I'm just worried about the time being. If we have time at the end. Is that all right? So any suggestions as to how we can have this full absorption in that situation? Yes?
Well, if we have a taste for it and satisfies us, then
Okay, so if it's a situation, but I particularly picked one that I figured you wouldn't have any taste for. I was quite intentional that I picked a situation that I figured probably nobody materially would enjoy it. Okay. But it wouldn't be a material taste, would it be? Right? It would have to be a spiritual taste. So I think what you're talking about there, what we can relate to, is how can we find a spiritual taste in there? And by the way, we're going to be talking about that, Krishna willing, this afternoon. How can we turn our attempt to get material rasa into an attempt to get spiritual rasa? Yes? By practicing. Now, as part of the book that Rukmini and I are working on, I'm reading a book about practice and how, it's a book about nature and work in the world, Varna. And to what extent our abilities and talents come out by practice rather than just inherently. And the author is citing a lot of studies showing that just simply doing the same thing over and over again doesn't constitute practice. In fact, I remember one of my teachers a long time ago said practice doesn't make perfect, it just makes permanent. Depends what you're practicing. So in order for practice to improve you, what you're practicing has to stretch you a little bit each time, and you have to know what you're supposed to practice. So you have to have a clear idea of what your goal is, what you're supposed to practice, and each time you practice, you aim for a little bit of an improvement out of your comfort zone. So I would agree with practice, but it's got to be a kind of intentional practice in knowledge, a sacrifice in knowledge, not just that I'm doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, expecting to get a different result. Okay? Other ways that we can become absorbed with association. But of course, you don't have much association there in the shop, probably. Right there in the shop, at that time, how are you going to become so absorbed that everything else becomes forgotten? Yes? Oh, very nice. Okay, good. Okay, so think of a picture. Think of a verse. A song. What else? A pastime. Did I just mention a pastime about the cowherd boys? How they went and they didn't get it, right? Look at that. Here I am at the store, not able to get it. Oh yeah, the cowherd boys, they went out and they didn't get anything either. You understand? Okay. How else could I become absorbed? Okay. But I want to become absorbed in what I'm doing. So it's not just that I want to cut out what I'm doing and become absorbed exactly in something else. I want to find a way to get absorbed in what I'm doing as service. Yes? Oh, wow. I only said like 30 seconds of stuff in all this time. Huh? Or he's a great summarizer. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, okay, exactly. And it's happening before. It's happened before, actually.
Yeah, okay.
At Walmart.
Okay, good.
But I needed this thing. I never got it, actually, but I was really determined. So that's one thing, determined, but kind of the whole reason I'm doing it is because I'm trying to serve, right? So if you're really in love, if you're really, because love means you're always thinking of that person, right? So if you really, kind of what I'm getting at is like,
You become absorbed in the person for whom you're doing
I'm just
it.
determined. Like, you know, I just...
I'm going to please this person.
It's like...
Yeah.
If I don't get it, it's the end of my life or something like that.
Well, but you got to be detached from the result.
Right,
okay.
right.
And I think this really brings us to the last one, which ties it all together. Only my desire to do the best for Krishna's alone pleasure in is my motive. Now, this is the secret that ties it all together. That I'm trying to make Krishna happy. And only Krishna happy. There's a definition of Krishna Prema given in the Nectar Devotion, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that all of our feeling of kinship is reposed in the Lord, that He's our only object. Does that mean neglect and irresponsibility? Because people think that, going back again to the beginning of the presentation. They think if I only care about pleasing Krishna, I'm not going to care about how I treat this person in the shop, because they're not Krishna. You understand? I'm not going to care about how I treat my kids, because they're not Krishna. I'm only caring about how I'm pleasing Krishna. That's not what it means. It means that how I'm dealing with my kids and this person in the shop, how I'm dealing with the items in the shop, because they're all what? Krishna's energy. They're all Krishna's. But if you can get this, again, it's one of these things where it's a small change that makes a big difference. We're not trying to please anyone independent of Krishna. Okay, so I'm teaching all of you, so I could be concerned about what you think of me. Is she a good teacher? Is she quoting enough slokas? One time I gave a class in front of people who were all of Indian background but not devotees. And somehow, I don't know, it's like I must have quoted every sloka that I knew in that class. I didn't even intend to. It just kind of happened. At the end of the class, there was one gentleman who came up to me and says, "You know more of the Bhagavad Gita than I do, and you're American." And then he decided to become a Hare Krishna devotee. Really, seriously, that's what happened. And I said, oh, that's why Krishna put all those verses in my head. But it's not... If I'm trying to please all of you, then I have the wrong God. I have the wrong shelter. Does that make sense? You know, some of you may like this class, some of you may not. Some of you say, God, I'm not going to go to any more of her presentations. And God, she's giving so many presentations here. Why did I even come? Oh, man. I mean, it might happen, you know. What can I do? But instead of trying to please the other people you're working with or yourself, which is all according to your false identity, instead, am I pleasing Krishna? Is Krishna pleased with how I'm teaching this class? Is Krishna pleased with how I'm dealing with all of you? Is He the one who's pleased? Is He the one who's smiling? And when we do that, yes, immediately all the other things follow. Although Prabhupada mentioned it last in this letter, as soon as we do that, then we can do everything else. I'm just trying to please Krishna. Okay, I think this will do in a group. How do we please Krishna? Okay, if you can get in groups, or do it by yourself if you're an introvert, 2, 3, no more than 4, 5 minutes. How do we please Krishna? And take in the same situation, how would you please Krishna? What would be pleasing to Krishna? How do you know it's pleasing to Krishna? Spiritual. And then what does one feel? Right? Bhoktaram yagatapasam sarva lokamahesham suridam sarvabhutanam gyatfamam shanti. One will feel peaceful. Now, does that mean that one's going to be like, oh, I can't find the tapioca. It's okay. No, you know, that's not... I'm really spiritual, man, you know, I'm just pieced out. but internally, one is feeling it's okay. You know, it's okay. When I started traveling all the time, I don't know, somehow when you're traveling all the time, all these things are right here all the time in your life. And I came up with a few mantras. You know, if it's not okay, everything's okay, and if it's not okay, it'll still be okay. Another one is, in the end, it'll all be okay, so if it's not okay, it's not the end. And it just, you know, it's just like, you may be intensely, very, very, very intensely involved in a situation such that the people around you would not categorize you as peaceful. I don't think people would look at Arjuna on the battlefield and say, man, he's really peaceful. You know, it's not like that. But internally, you're like the ocean that the rivers are flowing in and you're not disturbed. It's like, I'm just here as an agent. I'm just here as an agent. And Krishna says this is actual freedom from all miseries caused by material contact. Krishna does not say freedom from all material miseries means that you have a lot of money in the bank and you have good health and you're beautiful and everyone thinks you're wonderful. That's not what he says. He says it's by relishing and rejoicing in the self. And that's the next thing, is that one will feel happy. And this is another one of my favorite quotes. This is from Krishna book, chapter 20. For the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who is in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated. What's really sad is I've met devotees who've heard that quote and said, isn't that reversed? I'm going to read this again. For the materialistic person, worldly affairs become too aggressive, whereas to a person who is in Krishna consciousness, everything appears to be happily situated. And I've met devotees and said, maybe the editors messed that up, you know. Maybe it's the devotees see everything that's aggressive and the materialists are always happy. And I'm like, then why are you chanting Hare Krishna? So one should feel this internal, I'm the observer. You know, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, chapter 13. I'm the observer. I'm here as an agent. I'm not the doer. I'm not responsible for the results. Krishna is the enjoyer. I'm not here in my false identity as the Lord of the world. Right? I have withdrawn from the false identity. And I hold the real identity. And when I hold the real identity, then I feel peace and joy. And that peace and joy are the primary subjective experiences that one has pleased Krishna. So I want to thank you very much. I do want to end now, so we have time to chant Gayatri before lunch. And what we are going to be doing next class is this topic. So, and this is going to be, particularly in the seminar we did just now, we did not deal with things that were actively sinful, right? We excluded them from our discussion. Yes? Everybody remember near the beginning? We excluded those. We said we're looking at how to find everything spiritually enlivening in our lives, but not like murder. We're not going to talk about murder this afternoon. But we are going to look at things this afternoon that, you know, are actively detrimental to our spiritual life according to the Shastra and to the Acharyas, and how do we get free of them. And I think the whole schedule for the weekend for what we're planning on doing, Krishna willing, is up on the wall. So I'm sorry I don't have time for any more questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.